All right, it's 5:30, so we'll call the meeting to order. Allison, would you do the roll call, please?
Merle. Neeson. Collins.
Here.
Topler.
Forgot niece.
Oh, Niece. Sorry.
Here.
Okay,
Topler.
all right. All right, 3 constitutes a quorum, so would you all rise, please? Dear God, as we gather this evening, we ask that you influence our hearts and minds so that we can govern this area fairly and justly. We thank you for the many blessings you have bestowed on our community. And we ask your continued protection upon our city staff and crew. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Jessica, we'll let you run it from afar.
Okay, we'll start with the consent agenda.
You'll have to make a motion. To approve the consent agenda.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Okay, now we have the recognition of guests. Mary Schrag from Physical Therapy Specialist Clinic will be first. And I'll keep the time. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. And I'll say 1 minute when you have 1 minute left.
Thanks, Jessica. I don't know if it's on. I can probably talk loud enough. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
I want to thank the city council for allowing me to attend tonight. I am here about the closure of the 8th Street closure, the road. And I really have 2 areas of concern that I want to just briefly present and share. And I guess the first would be that initially there was no communication to the area property owners. I understand that there is a difference in vacating a street and closing a street, although I don't know the nuance difference. But I will say honestly, I have served on boards for many, many years, and I understand sometimes it's difficult to deal with lay people like myself to always understand the nuances in which you all are having to deal with. But as a property owner, having paid taxes and having my clinic at the location for the last 32 years, I feel like as a community member, just the courtesy of, even if it doesn't fit that very specific definition, of the fact that there would be a pretty significant change. And I will admit, I do get the quill. I get the hard copy and I do the electronic copy, but I obviously missed the day that the picture was posted in the newspaper. But I know in general that most of our staff and, well, all of our staff, all of our patients, really no one was aware of this closure. And so on Monday of the week of the closure, I had come up from the south because I have a rental down on ZZ, drove on the egress ingress that MoDOT put in that goes by Shaw Building and then down 8th Street. And then that afternoon I had to go to an area of business. And when I came back, it was still open. Wednesday morning, when I came to work, I came from the north. I turned there at Sonic and then I turned on Kentucky to go on 8th Street. And there is like no road. So there's no signage, no communication. I mean, I see that as a significant issue, but then when I also realized it creates a cul-de-sac currently into the emergency room parking lot, which I turned around and then had to come back, go down Kentucky, turned down 10th and was able to get back on 8th Street to the clinic. So I just wanted to briefly share that experience because that felt stunning. And so when I then called the city to see what was going on, I know that the administrator was out, I think taking some personal vacation time, but Brian Mitchell, who is your streets director, was kind enough to call and to explain to me at the time kind of some of the thought process. But I want to say, as I reached out to city council members, I also realized that there was not, in my opinion, a lot of awareness. I actually visited with a member of your zoning and planning who was not aware of the 8th Street closure. And so I feel like as a community member, for me to then feel this sense of confusion is probably not surprising. So I think from a governance perspective or from a policymaking perspective, even if communicating with all the local landowners is not an absolute legal requirement, I think that there is a need or necessity. And I know I had someone say, well, really, that was the contractor's responsibility. But I would say in the past, when I have been involved with similar type things, which again, serving on other boards myself, I mean, there is this ownership of, even if you subcontract something out, there is the responsibility of the primary organization. So I really needed to share that.
1 minute.
It's claims to be the best it can be, but I know as a business owner, these are the kind of things you do look at. And then the second part, which I'll try to keep in 45 seconds, is just a little bit of the safety issue, because if you GPS going to the emergency room today from MSU, from DRS, or from the Civic Center, it is still going to take you through 8th Street. I do know the hospital has some intentions of putting up some signage, but again, I also have some concerns about being forced through on 9th or 10th Street, which are residential streets still, and lots of homes still there. So they're not owned primarily by the hospital. So I guess my question is, what was the intention or what is the gain? I mean, closing 8th Street, was it really necessary? And I don't sit in your seats, so I don't know that answer. But from my perspective, it is blurry at best. So thank you again.
5
I appreciate it.
minutes.
And I'm finished.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Right. Next guest, Earlene, I believe will do the introduction here.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight, we're going to have Matt Wallace from KPM CPAs from our audit firm in Springfield, give you guys a bit of an update on this year's audit, the results, and any recommendations they have.
As Earlene mentioned, I'm Matt Wallace, a partner with KPM CPAs in Springfield. New face for you all. I think you're used to Andy Marmaget, so I'd like to say I'm the new and maybe biased, but probably improved version of Andy Marmaget. Today I'll present the financial statement audit results. I like to do it the old-fashioned way, so I gave everybody a copy of the audit report, and I'll just kind of go through each section, and feel free to interrupt at any time if you do have any questions. Start on page 4. So on page 4, we have the independent auditor's report. The reason we come out is to issue an opinion as to whether your financial statements are free from material misstatement. You can read the first couple of paragraphs there, the opinions paragraph. But to summarize, the city did receive an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. It's the best opinion you can receive from a financial statement standpoint. So I definitely want to congratulate the city on that. Then I just wanted to hit some of the highlights. Next, we'll go to page 8. So on page 8, we have the first page of the management's discussion and analysis section of the audit report. This is an unaudited section meant to be presented from management's perspective. I always say it's a great place to go if you want a summarized overview of the city's operations. In this case, we're looking at a 9-month period to December 31st, 2022. Great place to go. There's also a section of economic factors near the end of that that's completed by management. Really great read to see where the city was for the year and where the city's going in the future. Nothing in there I want to go over specifically, but just wanted to point out that's a great place to go for a brief overview. Next, to hit the highlights on the financial statements, let's go to page 20. So on page 20, we have the balance sheet for the governmental funds. This should look a little different for you all. Starting with at December 31st, 2022, the city made the decision to separate out all the functions of the general fund. So now in the past, you would have just had one general fund. Now we're tracking specific revenue streams separately. So you're having separate funds for different revenue streams. So it does look a little different for you all. Since it is the first period that we have this, I just wanted to go over the highlights on the farthest column, the total governmental funds, because that's going to be what we can compare easiest to the previous period. You'll see total assets about halfway down the page there, about 13.2 million. That was down about 600,000 for the prior year. I also like to point out the top line cash and also your investments. Cash and investments for the year are right at 9.8 million. That was down about 1.2 million from the prior year. And continuing near the bottom there, you'll see the total fund balance for your governmental funds was right at 11.3 million, which overall was down about 1.1 million from the prior period. Next, if we'll go to page 22. So on page 22, we have the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the governmental funds. Did want to point out here, you'll see there at the top, it says the 9-month period, December 31st, 2022. The city did make the decision to change its fiscal year end from March 31st to December 31st. So we're looking at a 9-month period instead of a full 12 months. For that reason, the income statement really isn't too comparable to the previous full year. So in future years, we'll go over this income statement and compare some of the top balances between the current year and the previous year. But since we are working with a 9-month period, I didn't really have anything to go over on this statement, but wanted to point that out. Next, we'll go to page 25. On 25, we have the statement of net position for the enterprise funds. And similarly to the general fund, we now have separated out all the utility fund activity into its own separate fund. So you'll see the electric fund, water, sewer, sanitation, and fiber, which used to all combine and make the utility fund. Now we've separated those out so you can see each revenue stream individually on the face of the financial statements here. So that's how you'll see that going forward. But again, for comparability purposes, I'll just go over that last column, the total enterprise funds, because that's how we would have seen it in the prior year. Total assets for the enterprise funds was right at 69.7 million. That was down about 400,000 from the prior year. Again, I always like to point out that top line, cash and investments, cash equivalents, and your investments as well, ended at about 16.6 million. That was down just about 75,000 from the prior year. And again, at the very bottom there, the total net position for your enterprise funds was right at 61.9 million. Overall was down about $135,000 from the prior period. If we'll briefly go to the next page, page 26. As with the governmental funds, this is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for the enterprise funds. Again, this is just a 9-month period. So in future years, we'll go over this and kind of hit some of the highlights as to what has gone up and down. But since this is only 9 months compared to the previous report, which would have been 12 months, it's really not too comparable at this time. So the next place I wanted to go was page 29. On page 29, we have the first page of the notes to the financial statements. The next 20 or 30 pages are the notes to the financial statements. That is part of our audit process. So everything within this is part of our audit opinion and was part of our audit process. I always say it's a good place to go if you want more detail on any line item on your balance sheet or income statement. So if it's related to capital assets, long-term debt, really any line item is probably going to have an associated note with that. So if you want more detail, I always say this is a great place to go first to look for that. There were no new notes this year, so there's nothing specific I wanted to go over. There really was just one more spot I wanted to stop in the audit package, which is on all the way back on page 80. All the way back on page 80, we have the schedule of findings and question costs. This is a required report when you have a single audit, meaning that your federal fund, you expended more than $750,000 in federal funds for the period. But I always like to point it out because it gives a good idea of everything that we did during our audit process. So that top section, which is labeled financial statements, that just reiterates that you all received an unmodified opinion on your financial statements, which we already went over. In addition to that, we also did review internal controls and were required to report on any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies we found on that related to reporting over financial statements. There were no findings in that. So there's a separate report in here that you can read, but there were no findings with that. And going down to that next section, federal awards, the major federal program that we tested where it was CDBG, your grants, you had several programs related to that, but your grants related to that. And again, you'll see we tested internal control over that federal program. And also that there were no findings, and there also was an unmodified opinion, meaning that we had no compliance findings for that program as well. It's basically the best opinion that you can receive for your federal programs as well. So definitely want to congratulate the city on that. Other than that, I just wanted to go over the separate letter that I think I had in the front of your audit reporting package. Should have a number 1 near the bottom of it. So in addition to issuing an opinion on the financial statements, reviewing internal controls over financial reporting, conducting a single audit for your federal awards, we just come across any recommendations we may have for the city, and I wanted to present those to management, to the board right now. You'll see number 1 there, cybersecurity and information technology controls. This is just a general recommendation we have now for all of our governments. Nothing specific that we saw during your audit. Everything went well related to IT. But it's important for the city just always to continue to monitor and evaluate the risk of cybersecurity in this day and age. We continue to see issues with that in other governments. So it's always to keep an eye on that. On the next page, item 2, software training. So, this year or this period, I guess, Earlene and her team did a lot of lifting. They converted, of course, as we saw, to separate all the funds for governmental funds and also for your enterprise funds, but also they implemented a new accounting software as well during that process. So there's a lot of heavy lifting there, a lot that was done. I thought it was important for our audit process to go really smooth with all of that happening. I definitely appreciate the work that was done by her team. But during that process, it's important, while the software is new, for Earlene and her team to just get that training that you get on the front end of any new software to make sure that you are using the full capability of that. Again, there were no issues that we came across during the process, just thought it would be a good idea while the software is new to get some training related to that. And finally, number 3 there, new pronouncements. This is just new GASB pronouncements that may have an effect on the financial statements going forward. I don't think there will be much of an impact, but if there is, that first one, GASB statement number 96, this is something that we'll work with Earlene during the audit process next year to make sure that we do implement. But it's just that the city does have any long-term IT type arrangements. Those will make it to the balance sheet as an asset and an offsetting liability. Again, this is something that we'll evaluate with Earlene. Overall, that will not affect the bottom line. There'll be no change there, but the financial statements will potentially look a little different with that, which we'll point out next year if that does, if you all do have any agreements that fall under that. That's pretty much all I have. Of course, I want to thank council for allowing me to present. Want to thank Sam, Earlene, her team. Again, with the software conversion and implementing the transition of the funds, splitting those out, and also having me as a new partner on the job. I thought the team did a really good job. I thought the audit went really smooth. I really appreciate all the work that was done, and they're very transparent. So I definitely appreciate the process. It went really well. No complaints on our end. Definitely want to thank their team. Want to thank you all, and I can answer any questions that you all have at this time.
After all the years of practicing Marmaget. We forget. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Earlene has my contact information, so if there are any questions or if anything comes up, I'm always available.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Next up, we have, and I apologize if I mispronounce your last name, Ronnie Eberl. And you'll have 5 minutes, and when you have 1 minute left, I'll let you know.
My name is Ronnie Eberly, and I'm here as a trusted servant of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're losing our meeting hall, and we need to find a place to go. And I've looked since we found this out in the beginning. I talked to the city administrator. We haven't found any place that will accommodate our schedule. So if the city does have a place that we could use to accommodate our schedule, we'd deeply appreciate it. Everybody in the group. People from out of town that moved here come to meetings. We have drug court comes to meetings. And there's three things in my life that's been a blessing. Being born in West Plains, leaving here in the 60s and going to the military, and this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So if we could get any help, we'd appreciate it. And everything will be appreciated. Anything you can do. We could found a place, we'd already been gone. So
Thank you, Ronnie.
anyway, thank y'all for having me.
Next, Ronald Lyman from the Alcoholics Anonymous group. And again, you'll have 5 minutes and I'll let you know when you have a minute left.
Okay, my name is Ron Lyman. AA needs a response for City Hall before dissing us. We are responsible for a county of 6 districts of meetings, and when court order orders them to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, we need a place. I was here a couple months ago and I have talked to administrators several times, and we haven't heard nothing. We don't know where we're going. I heard what was supposed to be the hospital, and that couldn't commonize us and that. And he mentioned about some building that had cut a wall out and never heard no more. You know, and we need a place, you know. We need a place for our board members and stuff, and that's about all I got to say, you guys. The only thing I got to say here at the end, when the city does sell the Crockett Oaks, I don't know who's responsible, but we have prepaid propane. You know, it's $400 and the tank is full. So I don't know when you guys is closing. Is Crockett's responsible for it or what? I don't know. But we're a self-supporting group. And we don't make a lot of money. It's enough to pay for our coffee and pay for our rent if we do our stuff that comes on up, props on up, you know. And we did our best to take care of the place. We did our best. And we took care of it. The roof, you know, shingles usually last for 25 years. And so I don't know who it was told who, but said that 16 years that the shingles was. Well, it don't leak or nothing. So we never had to replace it or put a roof on it. And we took responsibility taking care of the place. And my friend here, Ron, the last 3 weeks, he's been cutting the grass. I know you guys didn't know it, but he was doing it, just trying to show his respect too of the situation. I'm just glad to be here, you guys, and I hope we can hear from you. Really do. That's all I got.
Thanks, Ron.
Now we have the reading of the bills. Bill 4740 to become ordinance 4740, first reading. An ordinance changing the official zoning map of the city of West Plains, Missouri, and defining the boundaries of the area to be changed on said official zoning map by this ordinance, a section of property owned by the West Plains Country Club.
I'll make a motion that we approve Bill 4740 to become ordinance 4740 on the first reading. I second.
Hello, Dustin.
Hello, Mayor, Council, thank you. This item was a second part of what you approved in the consent agenda for a minor subdivision from the West Plains Country Club. This was made to allow for 2 digital billboards per MoDOT's requirements to apply for that application to permit those. It will be 2 developable lots on each corner, the corner of CC Highway and 160 or 63, and then Gibson and 63 as well. So, and this did receive a positive recommendation from Planning and Zoning, and be willing to answer any questions you'd have.
And what is the use again, Dustin?
So the actual two zones that they're actually wanting to rezone
Each
would be
corner.
C2,
Uh-huh.
which they're adjacent to. And they wanted to leave the remainder R1 as a buffer to the residential area.
And they're gonna be used for a billboard placement?
They're going to be used for billboards, but per our ordinances, they had to be at least large enough size to be developable lots, so we weren't approving a substandard lot.
So it does meet the setback and the height requirements as structures required?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And my other question, without knowing what it's going to be used for until now,
Yes.
is there going to be any access road that's going to cause traffic congestions like we're dealing with on KK Highway?
So the likelihood of it actually being developed as a commercial lot, probably not good, but we did make sure the lots went further enough back off of MoDOT right away and looked at those access points that it would not create any type of congestion close to the intersection. We had to work with this land surveyor just a little bit on that.
The reason I ask that is our proposed future land use does not prescribe that to be developed as a radiant residential. It has intersection improvement,
Correct.
but no development. And I was thinking, man, if they're going to develop this, we're going to end up with another.
Yeah, the likelihood of it, I mean, but there again, we wanted to make sure the lot sizes were big enough for development. The access was far enough back. Future land use shows that to be a mixed use. Commercial and residential there, so it is in compliance with that future land use plan as well, but we did take that into consideration.
But MoDOT would have to provide the access approval for on CC Highway and Broadway off of 63.
We're far enough back on Broadway to be on city. MoDOT would still have to prove any access off CC.
Okay. And then if any other development was to be proposed, planning and zoning would have to be approved, would have to pre-approve, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Are the billboards gonna be high enough where traffic can see under them?
I hope so, yeah. They've got to go through the MoDOT approval process and then plus they'll go through a city approval process as well. Yes, sir. Thanks.
Allison?
Bill 4740 to become ordinance 4740, Merle,
Yes.
Neese,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Topliff.
Yes.
Bill 4741 to become ordinance 4741, first reading. An ordinance to annex a section of property owned by Seth and Mallory Johnson into the city limits of West Plains.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that Bill 4741 become ordinance 4741, first reading. Second.
Hey, Dustin.
Hey.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I'm probably gonna leave after this. If you guys
Yeah, I
are okay.
understand.
Okay. I'll be in trouble. But anyhow, this item came before planning and zoning Thursday as well. This was a request from Seth and Mallory Johnson to annex a portion of land for city utilities. It was presented by Seth that he plans to build potentially 3 spec homes for additional housing in the city. And that's part of our requirements per city ordinance. If they request city utilities, that we require them to annex. It did receive a positive recommendation from planning and zoning as well.
And a use map would have to be approved before they actually do the development.
If they decide to do more than one structure, they'll have to come back with a minor subdivision.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks, Dustin.
Mallory? God, sorry. Flashback there.
It's okay.
Allison?
Bill 4741 to become ordinance 4741, first reading. Merle,
Yes.
Neese,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Topliff.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Next, we have resolutions. Resolution 2023-12, a resolution of the city of West Plains, Missouri, terminating an undated lease agreement between the city and the Heart of the Ozarks Alcoholics Anonymous, executed in November or December of 2017.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that resolution 2023-12 be approved. A second.
Sam, did you have anything to say on that?
I'm just available to answer any questions. In summary, this is the lease agreement between the city and the Heart of the Ozarks Alcoholics Anonymous Group for the lease of the Lincoln School building. Previously, council took action to sell the property to Crockett and Tanya Oaks for the purpose of a cultural center. And so as part of that process, we went through and reviewed the paperwork and have deemed this lease to be, there's an issue. Essentially, when we signed it back in 2017, there was an agreement that the roof would be replaced, and to date, that action hasn't taken place. And so this resolution terminates the agreement between the two entities. And if I could address the comments from the Rons in the audience. Yeah, we were unsuccessful in finding city property that would be usable for the meeting schedules. We've also worked with the hospital and with the university to try to find other locations, and I understand that they were unsuccessful in that regard as well. So we'll keep working and looking for potential partners for the alcoholics group. We'll be reaching out to churches and things. I know, Ron mentioned trying to reach out to a couple. I don't know that we've reached all of them here in West Plains, but we'll keep trying on behalf of the group to see if we can find a spot.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Resolution 2023-13, a resolution of the city of West Plains, Missouri, the city authorizing the sale and consumption of beer and wine at the municipal golf course.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that resolution 2023-13 be approved. I second.
Tom,
As the resolution states, it's just a request from Maxim Golf. Of course, Maxim Golf manages our golf course. They would like to sell alcohol out of the golf course. The license, the liquor license would be up to them to secure. It would also be in their name. So basically, the company and their employees would be the ones selling the alcohol. As of right now, the plan is to sell beer. They do manage golf courses throughout Missouri and throughout the Midwest. They feel very confident this would increase our revenue significantly out there and enhance the golfing experience. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
all those in favor, say aye.
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 Right. Thank you, Doc.
Resolution 2023-14, a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute an abatement order on consent between the city of West Plains, Missouri and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that resolution 2023-14 be approved. I second.
How are you doing?
Pretty good.
You guys have been busy.
A little bit. This right here is just kind of an agreement between us and DNR that we've been working on for quite some time and finally have came to an agreement that I think is best for all of us. To kind of help us get back on track with DNR down at the wastewater plant.
Yep.
And kind of help protect us and them.
Right. Good. Right, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 2023-15, a resolution authorizing the mayor or city administrator to execute a pole attachment agreement between the city of West Plains, Missouri and Brightspeed of Missouri LLC.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that resolution 2023-15 be approved. My second.
Good evening again. This is just an agreement between us and Brightspeed for them to attach to our poles, which they're already attached to. They're going to be overlashing new fiber in the area, about 50 miles of fiber in the West Plains area to better their network and better serve the citizens of West Plains.
I saw them out today at some of the polls working, and it's good to see that they're wanting to invest some money into the city, so that's a positive. All right, those all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 2023-16, a resolution authorizing a cooperative agreement between the city of West Plains and the West Plains Public Library.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion resolution 2023-16 be approved. I second.
Hello again. This is just again to renew the cooperative agreement between the library and the city of West Plains.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Next, we have council action. Approval of permit for West Plains R7 School District.
Just a little bit of background, you see the request from the school district. They have a bit of a groundhog problem over at various properties on school districts. So they reached out to our police chief to ask if they could try to address that through the use of a pellet gun, and our current ordinances prohibit such activity. So we reached out to our attorney, to Chief Monticelli as well. And there is a section in the code that allows council to authorize a permit for the use of a projectile weapon, in this case, a pellet gun, to try to address that groundhog problem. So we asked the school district to prepare a letter with that request. And so you have that in front of you, and Chief is certainly available to answer any questions if you have any, but he's reviewed that and feels comfortable with the process that they've outlined in the letter. So.
Sam or Chief, would you mind expanding on how that's going to be done with the safety of our citizens in mind? Like, you're going to rope it off, declare it off limits to other people when you're actually trying to eradicate them?
Yes, they're, as the letter said, they're only going to do it when the grounds are vacant. And it's one of 3 people that are doing, all responsible people. They explain what weapons they're going to use and how they're going to get rid of the remains in a safe way. So they got quite a bit of damage there. So they've tried many other methods, trapping and things like that, and nothing has worked. So this must be a particularly bad year because we've had 2 or 3 other requests of residents wanting to get rid of their groundhogs. So I don't know if it's if that's a usual thing, but I know Mr. Osborne is, Mr. Archer has tried this for the last couple of years of different measures trying to get rid of them, but this year is particularly bad.
Who's Mr. Archer?
He is with the R7 school.
Okay.
So
Is this open-ended? I mean, or is there a set limit on how long we're gonna?
that's up to you all. The ordinance says a permit is given, so I would assume he needs a couple weeks to destroy him, and then he would have to apply for another permit. So, okay. So.
Any other discussion?
Don't get your cast iron out.
I believe I need a,
Yep, I think you just take a vote on that item.
okay, all those in favor to approve the R7 request, say aye.
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 Aye, all right.
Next, under council action, approval of Civic Center sign donation.
And similarly, back in 2021, we had received a donation from the Southern Hills Shopping Center of the new electronic message board that we installed at the Civic Center, which basically made the one that we had there obsolete and no longer in use. So we were contacted by the city of Alton through the Alton School District of their interest in perhaps using that sign. So part of our requirements for surplus property is that we would designate that sign as surplus property, but then also if we're going to donate it to another tax exempt organization, local government, that we need council's approval for that as well. So we're seeking your permission tonight to go ahead and allow Alton officials to come in, deconstruct the sign and transport it and use it for their use.
No, several years back, we did the same thing with the whole tornado sirens, so.
Yep.
All right, all those in favor of donating our Civic Center sign to City of Alton, say aye.
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 All right,
Next is the city administrator's report.
Thank you and good evening again, everyone. Just a few items on my list this evening. Last week, we wrapped up the public comment period for the comprehensive plan. We had a joint meeting of planning and zoning and city council members last Thursday to review some of the preliminary findings of that. Talk a little bit about next steps. Our hope is that the consultant will have a completed plan presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their meeting in August, followed by adoption from the city council in later on at our regular meeting in August. But I would just like to thank all citizens, residents who participated in that process. We had over 500 residents participate, either participating in the commenting online, filling out the survey that Olson held. So we feel pretty good that we've got a good plan that we're going to be presenting to you in the future. That is, statistically valid from a resident perspective. We heard from a sufficient number of residents through this process that we feel good that the recommendations are the voice of the community, so to speak. So we'll have that information to you again next month. But again, just want to thank everybody who participated in that process. We really appreciate it. Also, it's going to be hot this week, so we ask citizens to be mindful of the weather, especially drink lots of water, take lots of breaks. We'll be asking our employees to do the same, especially those who work outdoors. They'll be taking a few more breaks during that work period as normal, but we want to keep them safe so that they can do what we need them to do. Finally, two other items, library and the Boys and Girls Club will be hosting a picnic at the park event this Thursday at 11:30 over at People's Park. So residents are invited to go have a picnic at 11:30 on Thursday. And speaking of surveys, library has a survey that they have online on their website. You can also go to the city's Facebook page, the library's Facebook page, and fill that out. But they're looking for input from citizens on how to improve library services here in the community. So encourage residents to participate in that process as well. And if they have any questions, they can reach out to Greg Carter, our library manager, or just ping us on social media, and we'll do our best to answer that question. But those are the items I have for you this evening. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Thanks, Sam.
Well, no further business. May God bless, and we are adjourned.